Imagine a civilization so powerful and advanced that its very existence feels almost mythical. The Mayan Empire, masters of astronomy, architecture, and strategy, ruled vast stretches of Central America for nearly 2,000 years. Their priests could predict solar eclipses centuries ahead. Their mathematicians discovered the concept of zero long before Europe, and their sprawling cities like Tikal and Calakmul rose like stone giants above the endless jungle canopy. They were a people who seemed eternal, destined to last forever. And then, almost overnight, they vanished. Before we uncover the chilling truth behind their mysterious collapse, pause for a moment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Drop your answer in the comments. And while you're there, smash that like button, share this video, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear will completely change the way you see ancient history. For centuries, historians have debated why the Maya disappeared. Some blamed catastrophic droughts, others pointed to famine, warfare, or deadly disease. Entire cities were abandoned, sacred temples fell silent, and monuments that once celebrated divine kingship were left unfinished, their carvings fading into the jungle mist. It was as if the gods themselves had turned away, leaving behind nothing but ruins and unanswered questions. But what if it wasn't to the wrath of the heavens or the cruelty of nature that ended the Maya? What if their fall was no accident, but the result of one person, a shadowy figure who understood that fear could destroy far more completely than swords or armies? Recently unearthed inscriptions, long dismissed as myth, tell of a mysterious figure known only as the Whisperer, a name spoken with dread even centuries later. This figure didn't conquer cities with brute force. Instead, he infiltrated, deceived, and manipulated, planting seeds of paranoia and betrayal until entire dynasties tore themselves apart. The Maya were not one unified empire, but a delicate network of rival city-states, each ruled by its own powerful dynasty. They thrived through trade, alliances, and shared culture, but this web of connection also made them vulnerable. A single rumor could turn allies into enemies. A single betrayal could unravel generations of trust. And the Whisperer understood this better than anyone. The first whispers of his presence emerged in the bustling city of Dos Pilas, a thriving hub of power and wealth. He arrived under the guise of a foreign merchant, blending seamlessly into the vibrant markets and royal courts. From the shadows, he began his work. Courtiers received forged letters suggesting their allies were plotting against them. Sacred offerings disappeared from temples, later found in the homes of innocent priests. Panic began to spread like wildfire. The king, gripped by fear, ordered mass executions of his most loyal advisors. The city crumbled from the inside, and when its enemies finally struck, Dos Pilas was too fractured to resist. The fall of one city might have been seen as a coincidence, but then it happened again and again. Across the Maya world, a pattern emerged. Irrigation systems mysteriously sabotaged, vital food supplies spoiled, alliances broken by sudden, inexplicable betrayals. Priests began interpreting these disasters as signs that the gods had abandoned their people. The Whisperer's genius wasn't just in creating chaos, it was in making it invisible, so his enemies destroyed themselves while never knowing he was there. By the year 900 AD, the great cities were silent. Majestic pyramids once filled with chanting priests and worshippers were swallowed by vines and jungle. To future generations, it seemed as though the Maya had simply vanished into the mists of time. But beneath the ruins lies a darker truth. This was no natural disaster, no random collapse. It was deliberate destruction, carefully engineered by a master of deception whose name was erased from history, leaving only fragments of fear and legend. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, the Whisperer vanished. Some believe he was a foreign agent, sent by rival civilizations like the Toltec, working to destabilize the Maya's power. Others claim he was one of their own, perhaps a high-ranking noble or priest consumed by vengeance or ambition. Whoever he was, his legacy endures in every ruined temple and deserted city. In the next chapter, we will trace the origins of this shadowy figure, exploring how a single spy harnessed fear and lies to bring down one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Because sometimes, history doesn't fall to swords or armies, it falls to a whisper. The Whisperer's origins are shrouded in the same darkness he once spread across the Mayan world. No ancient scroll, no crumbling stela carved in stone, reveals who he truly was. To this day, historians and archaeologists argue over scraps of evidence, trying to piece together the puzzle of this shadowy figure. Some believe he was a foreigner, a spy sent by a rising rival power, perhaps the mysterious Toltec people, whose influence was just beginning to ripple across Mesoamerica at the time. Others claim he was a Mayan nobleman himself, a man who knew the intricate politics and fragile alliances of the cities, because he had been born among them, raised inside the very palaces he would later destroy. The truth may never be known, but what is clear is this: whoever the Whisperer was, he understood something vital, that civilizations are not toppled from the outside. They collapse when they are made to turn on themselves. Mayan society was built on balance and ritual. Kings ruled not just through military might, but through divine authority, claiming to be the chosen mediators between mortals and gods. This spiritual power was reinforced through elaborate ceremonies, blood sacrifices, and carefully orchestrated alliances between city-states. If people lost faith in their kings or in the gods who legitimized their rule, the entire system would crumble. And the Whisperer exploited this vulnerability with terrifying precision. He didn't need to raise an army. He simply needed to plant doubts in the right places at the right time. One of his earliest documented moves involved the great city of Calakmul, one of the most powerful Mayan centers of its era. Calakmul had a long-standing rivalry with its neighbor, Tikal, a city whose towering pyramids seemed to touch the sky itself. For generations, these two giants competed for dominance, waging wars through both direct battle and shadowy politics. The Whisperer understood that by manipulating this rivalry, he could destabilize the entire region. It began with a single act. A forged letter, allegedly written by one of Tikal's generals, was delivered to Calakmul's king. The message claimed that Tikal's royal family planned to assassinate Calakmul's heir during an upcoming religious festival. Faced with this supposed threat, Calakmul's king tightened his security and began plotting his own preemptive strike. Tikal, seeing these sudden military preparations, assumed Calakmul was preparing for war. Within weeks, both cities were on the brink of open conflict, all because of a single false message carefully crafted by the Whisperer. When the war finally erupted, it wasn't just soldiers who died. Trade routes collapsed, farmers abandoned their fields, and surrounding smaller cities were forced to choose sides. What had been a prosperous, interconnected network quickly descended into chaos. But the Whisperer didn't stop there. Even as cities turned against one another, he worked from within to destroy their faith in the very institutions that held them together. Priests began reporting strange, unexplainable omens, sacred idols stolen or desecrated, temple fires breaking out in the dead of night, crops mysteriously failing after rituals. To the people, it appeared as though the gods were angry, withdrawing their favor. But in reality, these events were acts of sabotage. The Whisperer was skilled not only at deception, but also at understanding the psychology of belief. He knew that when people stopped trusting their leaders and their gods, they would spiral into panic, tearing their own cities apart without him ever needing to be seen. There is one haunting account found on a fragment of stone discovered deep within the ruins of Copan. It depicts a figure standing behind a Mayan king, whispering into his ear while chaos unfolds around them. Warriors fighting, temples burning, priests weeping. The accompanying glyphs describe the one who brings words of poison, a figure who could twist truth into lies and lies into truth. Scholars debate whether this was a literal reference to the Whisperer or simply a metaphor for internal corruption. But to those who know the legend, it is clear. This was the moment when the spy's influence reached its peak. As his schemes grew, so too did the paranoia he created. Kings began executing advisors and family members, believing them to be traitors. Entire noble bloodlines were wiped out in the name of security. Merchants stopped traveling between cities, fearing ambush or betrayal, which only deepened the economic collapse. The Whisperer didn't need to destroy the Mayan civilization himself. He simply needed to set it on fire and watch it burn. And all the while, he remained in the shadows, a ghost no one could catch. What would you have done in this situation? I want to ask you directly. If you were a ruler of one of these great cities and strange whispers began to reach your ears, would you have trusted those around you or started to question everything? Think about it, because in a world built on fragile alliances and sacred trust, even the smallest seed of doubt could grow into a catastrophe. By the time the year 800 AD approached, the Mayan world was already unraveling. Entire regions were depopulated as people fled the constant wars and religious upheaval. Even the most powerful cities were now weakened and isolated, unable to coordinate or defend themselves. The Whisperer had accomplished what armies and conquerors never could. He had turned a mighty civilization inward, making it devour itself from the inside out. And yet, he was still not finished. The final phase of his plan would not just weaken the Maya, it would ensure their complete and total collapse. In the next chapter, we will follow his last and most daring move, the one that pushed the Mayan world beyond the point of no return, and explore how a single whisper can echo through centuries. By the early 9th century, the once mighty Mayan world was crumbling. Great cities that had stood for centuries were little more than empty shells, their towering pyramids looming over abandoned streets like silent ghosts of a lost age. The lush jungles began reclaiming what human hands had built, creeping over stone temples and swallowing entire roads. The people, scattered and starving, clung to fragments of their former glory while whispering of dark omens and cursed prophecies. It was in this chaotic, fragile moment that the Whisperer made his final, devastating move, the strike that would ensure there was no recovery, no second chance for the Maya. The Whisperer understood something few could see. The Mayan civilization didn't just rest on kings, priests, or armies. It rested on faith, faith in the divine order, in the rituals that tied the people to their gods, and in the sacred kings who were believed to bridge the human and spiritual worlds. As long as the people believed their rulers had divine favor, the cities would endure, even through war and famine. But if that faith was shattered, everything would collapse. The Whisperer had spent decades destabilizing politics and economics, but now he aimed directly at the spiritual heart of the empire. He began with a masterstroke of deception. During one of the most important religious festivals of the year, a time when thousands gathered to witness elaborate rituals meant to renew the bond between the gods and the people, disaster struck. In the great city of Izmo, as priests raised sacred offerings to the heavens, the central temple suddenly caught fire. Flames consumed the holy structure in minutes, while panicked worshippers screamed and fled. Among the ruins, a series of markings were later found, strange symbols no one had ever seen before, etched deep into the temple stones. Priests claimed these were messages from angry gods condemning the people for their sins. Fear rippled across the land like a shockwave. In reality, the fire had been carefully planned by the Whisperer, who used a blend of flammable oils and precise timing to ensure maximum destruction. The mysterious symbols were his own invention, designed to deepen the illusion that the divine had turned against the Maya. Word of the disaster spread faster than any army could march. Cities hundreds of miles apart began to riot, fearing they would be next. Rival factions accused one another of blasphemy, and priests competed to interpret the supposed messages of the gods. The Whisperer exploited this chaos perfectly, feeding forged prophecies and false visions to trusted intermediaries. Soon, entire dynasties were overthrown not by invading warriors, but by their own terrified citizens, convinced that their rulers had lost the favor of the gods. By now, the lies were so thick, even the truth sounded like deception. Crops failed because irrigation systems were destroyed, yet people believed it was divine punishment. Armies deserted their posts, not because of strategy or politics, but because they thought the end of the world was near. In some places, desperate kings resorted to mass sacrifices, slaughtering hundreds in a futile attempt to appease their angry gods. But these actions only deepened the panic, fueling the very destruction the Whisperer desired. In the midst of this chaos, one final and chilling act cemented his legacy. In the sacred city of Chichen Itza, the heart of Maya's spiritual power, a young high priest was secretly approached by the Whisperer. No one knows exactly what was said, but the results were catastrophic. The priest emerged days later with a new prophecy, one declaring that the gods themselves demanded the destruction of the old ruling families. Under this banner, a violent uprising swept through the city. The royal family was slaughtered, temples were looted, and priceless knowledge was lost forever as libraries of bark paper books were burned to ash. It was as if the heart of Maya civilization had been ripped out in a single night. Do you think at this moment anyone still believed they were safe? Or was the end already closing in? Imagine being a farmer watching your world crumble, neighbors turning against each other, temples burning, the jungle reclaiming the land. Even if you knew the truth, even if you somehow suspected that one man was behind it all, what could you do against a ghost no one had ever seen? The genius of the Whisperer was not just in his ability to destroy cities, but in how completely he erased himself from the story. As the Maya descended into chaos, no one could prove he had ever existed. To those who lived through it, the collapse seemed inevitable, like a curse from the heavens. Even today, historians struggle to separate fact from legend. Some fragments of glyphs describe a figure whose voice is many, but whose face is none, suggesting a man who worked entirely through others, never revealing his true identity. It is possible that his name was deliberately erased by those who survived, perhaps out of fear that even speaking it aloud would invite disaster. By the year 900 AD, the great cities of the Maya were finished. Tikal, once a city of tens of thousands, stood eerily silent. Calakmul, its ancient rival, lay in ruins. Roads that had once carried trade and culture were overtaken by the jungle. The once mighty civilization had dissolved into scattered villages and wandering tribes, leaving future generations to stumble upon their abandoned temples centuries later and wonder how such a powerful people could disappear. But the Whisperer's legacy did not vanish with the cities he destroyed. His techniques, manipulation through fear, lies as weapons, and chaos as a strategy, would echo through history. In a way, he was the blueprint for every spy and saboteur who came after him. Where others used blades, he used words. Where others conquered with armies, he conquered with ideas. The final question that remains is perhaps the most haunting of all. Who was he working for? Some believe he was an agent of the Toltec, whose rise coincided suspiciously with the Maya's fall. Others think he acted alone, a man consumed by vengeance or ambition. Perhaps he was neither Maya nor Toltec, but someone from a completely unknown civilization, testing methods of control that would later shape the course of human history. As we approach the conclusion of this story, one truth becomes clear. Empires rarely fall because they are defeated from the outside. They fall when they are made to destroy themselves from within. And the Whisperer, whoever he was, understood this better than anyone. In the next chapter, we will uncover the aftermath of his destruction and explore why his story was buried so deeply, almost as if history itself wanted to forget him. The jungle was silent. Centuries after the fall of the Maya, the ruins of once great cities stood as haunting monuments to a civilization that had touched the stars and then vanished. Massive stone pyramids pierced through dense foliage, their carvings weathered by rain and time. Howler monkeys screamed from the treetops, while vines choked sacred temples. For explorers who stumbled upon these places generations later, it felt as though the earth itself had swallowed the people whole. But the truth, the real truth, had been buried even deeper than the ruins themselves. And at the center of it all was a man no one truly knew. A man history tried to erase. The Whisperer. As the Mayan Empire collapsed around 900 AD, the surviving cities were too fractured and paranoid to rebuild. Trade routes were gone, roads reclaimed by the jungle. Knowledge that had taken centuries to gather, advanced astronomy, mathematics, and engineering, vanished overnight as libraries of bark paper codices burned into chaos. The Whisperer's brilliance was in ensuring no one suspected him. His fingerprints were everywhere, yet invisible. Even as kings died and temples burned, the Whispers always blamed the gods, rival factions, or curses. It was a perfect smokescreen. By the time anyone questioned what had really happened, it was already too late. The Mayan world had destroyed itself. To outside observers, it looked like a natural decline, famine, drought, and war. Even modern historians often accept this explanation. But every once in a while, a fragment of evidence surfaces. A glyph carved deep into a hidden chamber. A strange symbol etched into a burned temple wall. A single line in a crumbling codex that speaks of the Faceless One, whose words unmake cities. These clues point to something terrifying. The fall of the Maya may not have been an accident of history, but the result of deliberate sabotage by a master spy. What happened to the Whisperer after the collapse? Some legends claim he vanished into the jungle, never to be seen again, his mission complete. Others whisper that he traveled to new lands, perhaps aiding in the rise of the Toltecs, whose dominance surged suspiciously soon after the Maya fell. A few chilling theories go further. They suggest the Whisperer wasn't just a man, but a title passed down through generations. A hidden society of spies and manipulators, moving silently through history, toppling empires when it suited their purposes. Could it be possible that the Whisperer's techniques didn't die with the Maya, but evolved, eventually shaping the rise and fall of later empires like the Aztecs, the Mongols, or even kingdoms half a world away? The methods used by the Whisperer were far ahead of their time. While others wielded swords and armies, he wielded fear, rumors, and disinformation. He understood a devastating truth. An empire does not need to be conquered by force. It only needs to believe it is doomed. By spreading carefully crafted lies, he turned allies against each other. By staging false disasters, he made people lose faith in their rulers. His final masterpiece was convincing an entire civilization that their gods had abandoned them, while he remained completely unseen. Even today, modern governments, intelligence agencies, and corporations use techniques eerily similar to his: propaganda, psychological warfare, and manufactured crisis. Was the Whisperer the first to master this dark art? Or was he merely following a playbook that humanity has never truly escaped? Centuries later, explorers stumbled upon the ruins of the great Mayan cities. They marveled at the towering pyramids, the intricate carvings, and the astronomical precision of Mayan science. But nowhere did they find a record of a single defining battle, no massive foreign invasion, no legendary conqueror to explain the sudden collapse. Instead, they found silence. The jungle had swallowed the truth, just as the Whisperer had intended. Yet, deep within a temple in the ruined city of Calakmul, a team of archaeologists recently uncovered a chilling artifact: a stone mask, its features blank and smooth, as if carved to represent no face at all. Beside it, an inscription read, "He who has no face cannot be defeated, for he is everyone and no one." Was this the final mark of the Whisperer? Or just another legend? No one can say for certain. But the discovery has reignited debates among historians. and perhaps confirmed what ancient survivors feared most. Their world did not fall by accident. It was pushed. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about the Whisperer's story is how easily history can be rewritten. When you visit the ruins of Chichen Itza or Tikal today, you see only what remains. The stones, the carvings, the silent plazas. You don't see the lies, the betrayals, or the invisible hand that turned proud cities into ghost towns. Empires rise and fall throughout history, and the reasons are always complex. But the story of the Whisperer reminds us that sometimes the greatest threats aren't armies or natural disasters. They are ideas planted in the minds of people, spreading like fire until they consume everything. And if one man could do this over 1,000 years ago with whispers and shadows, imagine what could be done today in a world of instant communication, global networks, and invisible digital wars. As you watch this video and think about the ruins left behind, consider this. What if the Whisperer's descendants are still out there, hidden in plain sight, shaping the world we live in now? What if the next great empire, maybe even ours, is already unraveling, and we don't even realize it? The jungle may be silent, but the whispers never truly stop. So the next time you read about the sudden fall of a nation, the collapse of a powerful system, or a revolution sparked overnight, ask yourself, is it chaos? Or is it someone's plan?